I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. If we could please start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell.
Here.
Ms. Nenny. Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Meterspall.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here. And I'd like to make a motion to excuse Ms. Ninny. I believe she'll be here at 6 p.m., but excuse her for the beginning of the meeting. She's up in Columbus helping us testify on House Bill 187, so we're grateful for that. So I'll make a motion to excuse her.
Second.
Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Mr. Meterspall.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Mr. Farrell.
Yes.
Okay, this evening we're starting with a public hearing. Followed by that, we do have some citizen comments. So if you submitted a citizen comment card and you intend it to be in relation to the topic for the public hearing, you're welcome to speak during the public hearing and not come up as a citizen comment. I know it can be a little bit confusing how that works. So we'll start with the public hearing first, and then we'll do citizen comments after that. Mr. Metz, are you presenting for us?
Good evening, City Council. Tonight before us we have a request by applicant Philip Brandon on behalf of Brandon Homes for approval of a preliminary development plan to construct 20 single-family dwellings on Central Avenue, also known as parcel ID 653-1043-00030. The property is a total of 6.724 acres. The project will need approval by City Council for the plan development map amendment and zone change. Next slide. Next slide. The subject property is currently zoned R3, Medium Density Residential District. Per the Middletown Development Code, the purpose of the R3 Medium Density Residential District is to provide for moderate density single-family residential uses in an urban setting in which are served completely by public infrastructure adequate for the applicable density of development. As you can see, the site is marked with the red star. Next slide. The applicant proposes a planned unit development that will feature 20 single-family homes at 2701 Central Avenue that are built to suit with lot widths ranging from 50 to 102 feet wide. The property is a total of 6.7264 acres. Per the Middletown Development Code, the purpose of the Plan Development District is to provide an opportunity for creative and flexible land development where a base zoning district will not accommodate the proposed development, but where such development will further the purpose of this code and the goals and the policy of the master plan. The PUD district is designed to allow for deviations from certain zoning standards that would otherwise apply if not contrary to the general spirit and intent of the Middletown Development Code. The comprehensive plan land use map designates this property as a special interest area. There's 8 special interest areas that require a more in-depth land use recommendation. Next slide. This particular special interest area is called the Central Avenue Corridor. The vision of the Central Avenue Corridor is a flourishing neighborhood scale commercial corridor that is walkable and a destination location for the city. The corridor has 2 large-scale redevelopment opportunities through reimagining the old Roosevelt School site and the former Lincoln School site into a premier mixed residential development. Next slide. The Roosevelt and Lincoln School sites are a redevelopment priority for this area. Additional reinvestment in this area should focus on improvement and enhancing of the area such as improved streetscaping and design. The development guidelines. Uses within the Central Avenue corridor may include a mix of neighborhoods serving commercial, retail, office, service, and residential uses. Uses that produce excessive noise, odors, and emissions are not appropriate for this site. The Roosevelt Lincoln School site should include a mix of residential uses that complement and support the neighborhood, surrounding neighborhood, and corridor. Residential uses may include a mix of types and densities, including townhomes, attached homes, and small-scale residential condominiums or mixed-use buildings. The lots that face Central Avenue have fairly defined development pattern with the buildings located close to the street with small front yards and rear or side parking lot for commercial uses. Pedestrian, multimodal, and vehicular connectivity should be provided throughout the site. Strategic open spaces should be provided through the site and provide both passive and active recreational opportunities. And new development within the site should include appropriate landscaping and buffering elements. Screening should be provided between non-residential uses and the surrounding residential neighborhood as appropriate. Next slide. Here's the current site plan. Features 4 homes facing Central Avenue with a rear-loaded garage or side-loaded garage, and the remaining 16 properties on the back half. The lots facing Central are wider lots, and the lots on the interior are a little bit smaller. I've included the lot sizes to the bottom right, as well as indicating where the detention open space is in the green area. Next slide. So Table 1204-4 site development standards for the City of Middletown's Development Code sets forth the minimum lot sizes and setbacks for the R3 zoning district. I've included the image of the table showing the R3 lot widths and the side yards, primarily in contrast to what would be proposed for this planned development. So minimum lot widths for the R3 district is 95 and 115 for corner lots, and then for the side yards, 7 feet. For the exterior lot widths of the proposed development, they range between 95 to 102 feet, meeting the minimum. The interior lot widths range between 50 to 69 feet wide. Interior lot setbacks are about 5 feet. So they're a little bit smaller on the side yard setbacks and a little bit smaller on the interior lots. Next slide. I've included several of the different illustrations provided to me by the applicant, and just take some time going through each one of these. Next slide. Next slide. If I go too fast, just let me know. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Looking at each one of those homes, majority of them meet the minimum lot area for the lot size. They meet the lot depth. They meet all of the other site development standards with the exception of the lot width and then the side yard setbacks. And then all the homes are much greater than the minimum livable square footage required for each single family dwelling. Per the Middletown Development Code, Table 1226-1, notice requirements, public notice was published in the paper, and letters were sent to all property owners within 200 feet of the property. All letters and emails that were received were forwarded to the City Council. The city's Internal Development Committee reviewed the proposal and gave its support. Next slide. The review criteria for the planned development and zoning map amendment. The following criteria shall serve as conditions that should generally be satisfied before the approval of a preliminary development plan and zoning map amendment. The proposed development is consistent with the master plan, other adopted city plans, and the stated purposes of this code in section 120407B15. The proposed development is necessary or desirable because of changing conditions, new planning concepts, or other social or economic conditions. The proposed development will not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, but will have a beneficial effect which could not be achieved as well as under other zoning districts. The proposed development will promote public health, safety, and general welfare. The proposed development is not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon the natural environment, including air, water, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, and vegetation, or such impacts will be substantially mitigated. The preliminary development plan has been transmitted to all the agencies and departments charged with the responsibility of review. The proposed development has provided evidence of assured access to the development site upon submission of the preliminary development plan application. Recommendations and decisions on code text or map amendment applications shall be based on consideration of the following review criteria. The proposed amendment is consistent with the master plan, other adopted city plans, and the stated purpose of the code. Proposed amendment is necessary or desirable because of changing conditions, new planning concepts, or other social or economic conditions. The proposed amendment will promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. The proposed amendment, if amending the zoning map, is consistent with the stated purpose of the proposed zoning district. Proposed amendment is not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon the natural environment, including air, water, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetation, or such impacts will be substantially mitigated. Proposed amendment is not likely to result in significant adverse impacts upon other property in the vicinity of the subject lot. Next slide. And on May 10th, 2023, the City of Middletown's Planning Commission voted 4-1 to approve a recommendation for a preliminary development plan to construct 20 single-family homes at 2701 Central Avenue. That ends my staff report. The applicant is here. Do you have any questions for me?
No questions for you. If the applicant wants to come up and provide additional information, we would be happy to hear.
Could you skip to the agenda slide for him, please? One more. Right there. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Alrighty, well, I am here really to just provide an overview. Wanted to first and foremost thank City Council, city leadership, and the engaged public for all of the input that has went into making this as a well-rounded proposal as it is. So wanted to just express a sentiment of thanks for that. Really, I wanted to spend just a little bit of time going over an introduction to Brandon Homes and also just the proposal at large. As I go through the proposal at large, I'll spend a little bit of time going through some of the work that the Research and Insight panel did to really understand the subject site and the surrounding areas. I always say a site or a development plan that is becoming of the area around it really starts with a good understanding of what that area is. From there, we'll go into the actual site development plan itself, and then if the council sees it appropriate, I'll open the floor up for Q&A with the public. Next slide. So brief introduction for those of you who are not familiar with the work that we do. The Brandon family, we've been a big part of the Middletown community, delivering quality new construction for the better part of 3 decades. Over the last 6 years under my leadership, Brandon Homes has become one of the fastest growing builders in the Dayton Home Builders Association. And the big testament to why that is really these 3 points on the slide. All of the folks that are staff members at Brandon Homes will attest to the fact that we live and breathe by these 3 elements that are on the slide. And the most important of those elements being the one right in the middle, and that's quality. Brandon Homes does a tremendous amount of things to ensure quality and make sure that our product is second to none. Whether it is a 150-point inspection process, which includes third-party inspections from inspectors, engineers, and all kinds of folks, to our industry-leading construction specs. Design is also super important to Brandon Homes. To see a Brandon Homes is to see a true expression of whatever our client was trying to achieve with their space. We achieve this by Studio B, which is our in-house design studio. And really what that means and that translates into is being able to depart from the standard cookie cutter builder grade home and really starting to get into some of that breathtaking, stunning design that all our consumers have come to know us for. The last piece is affordability. On average, we are about 15 to 20% lower than our peer group on price. That's strategic because our volume, our scale allows us to transfer costs to our end consumer. And all of these 3 elements kind of really tie into this piece of what we call accessible luxury. And has parlayed to us being able to serve hundreds of homeowners, government, and non-for-profit agencies over the years. Next slide, please. This slide is important, especially for the context of this project. Our footprint in Middletown is one that is meaningful and intentional. We've produced over 100 homes in the Middletown area, and recently Brandon Homes has earmarked $2 million of marketing and office space assets that we plan to deploy in this area over the next 3 years that we're really, really proud of, reaffirming our selection of Middletown as a place that we want to do business at. Many of the folks in the room might know me. I am Middletown born and raised. I actually went to the subject site, Roosevelt School, so this project's a bit personal for me, but really our impact in Middletown is important. A couple other points on the slide: 10% of profits are donated locally, either through the church or non-for-profit agencies. We always avail ourselves for board and strategic insight, our talents and our skills when called upon either by the city or local organizations. And we've played a significant portion or a significant part in some of the commercial revitalization that's been critical for this city. Next, please. And so with that being said, that's a little introduction into Brandon Homes. I think it's important to understand the builder that's in front of you, the developer that's in front of you, as we move into the actual proposal itself. And so one of the things that our insight and research panel spent a tremendous amount of time really wanting to zero into is understanding what is around in this area, to make sure that we're not only designing a community that's becoming of that area, but also a community that accentuates the surrounding area. Two slides that we incorporated in here to summarize a ton of work in this area. The first is around the actual elevation and exterior design of the community, which means how do the houses look? How are they built? What are the main architectural styles that run throughout the community? One of the things that we loved about that community, and I've always admired it even growing up and going to school in that area, is there are diverse housing styles all throughout the community. There's not many homes that look very, very similar to one another. Although there's consistency in design through what we would consider three major tranches of architectural style. The first of which being craftsman style, traditional style, and bungalow style. All of those are kind of marketed, and we've pulled examples. And so as we were designing the plan, we really wanted to make sure that we borrowed those elements of diversity and consistency and rolled them into our plan. That was very important. Next slide, please. As far as the lot design, that was the next area that the Research and Insight panel really kind of dug into. How should we structure this community? If you go down Central, one thing you'll notice is there are more grand lots facing to the Central Avenue Street. The cross-secting streets, or interior streets as we would call them, they're more modest lots. And so the median lot width of the exterior facing lots are probably about 60 feet wide. And then on the interior lots, they're about 50 feet in width. And so we wanted to make sure that we, at least at a minimum, carried that forward in our plan design. The second piece here is during our digging and research, it was kind of cool. What we found is before the Board of Education purchased it to build the junior high school at the time, it was actually proposed to have 16 smaller lot sizes and 4 larger lots, similar in fashion to what we do, but what we've done, but slightly different. And it was supposed to be a Melissa Drive that actually ran through there. So it's interesting. Had the Board of Education not actually purchased that site, that's what will be there today. Next slide, please. And so as we considered all of these elements, there were hundreds of inputs and 100 pieces of input from community, from our experience, from our research that really formed this concept of the Preserve at Roosevelt Ridge, which we're really proud of and excited to present to the community. Next slide, please. And so as we were designing this community, we really wanted to say, okay, what are our 3 principles as we're going through? What are going to be our guardrails as we design this community? The first is really related to all of the things that we've just talked about, the preservation of character in that neighborhood. We wanted to make sure we're coming in with a community that is really going to accentuate what's currently there and be independently beautiful as well. And so to do this, we did several things. So the custom home community, this is around that planned diversity that we just spoke about. At Brandon Homes, we reject the notion of a cookie cutter home just in general, but in particular for this site, we're proud to say that this is going to be a custom home community. So when you go into the community, no home will be the same. And so we'll have different parameters in place to ensure that. And the main way that we'll ensure that is we actually have 12 floor plans and elevations that we've already earmarked for this community. That list is growing by the day. We are currently designing 4 additional plans specifically for this community. And so I think what you'll actually realize is probably by the time, should this launch, you'll probably have more elevations of floor plans than you have available lots. And that's going to give people a breadth of opportunity to design a home that fits within their parameters, but also in the same respect, make sure that we have that diversity. The next piece here is around the actual layout of the community. Of course, there was an opportunity to get more lots on the site. We didn't think that that was appropriate given the site because we really wanted to maintain the exterior facing lots to Central being more expansive, more estate-like lots, and then the interior lots being more modest, but some of them being still spacious. So we're actually looking at 95 to 105 feet on the front-facing lots, which conforms with existing zoning, and then on the interior-facing lots, you're looking at about 50 to 69 feet in width, and so far exceeding what's currently in the surrounding areas today, and really especially those central lots coming in and saying that we really want to have some really cool estate-like homes facing Central. Last on the preservation of character is the breathtaking elevations. I'm really excited to be able to present to you in some of the upcoming slides some of the elevations that we have earmarked for this community. We didn't pull a punch on them, and that's mostly because we want this community to be something that Middletown can be proud of, in a restoration of craftsmanship and character into our community. That's very important. The second thing that we have here as a guiding principle for our design is building for the future. All of us know Middletown has an abundance of what we call mill houses, the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom houses. I grew up in one myself. Those homes fall into a category that we call functional obsolescence. And so how are we designing homes to attract and retain the citizens of tomorrow for Middletown? And so we have spent a ton of time designing ultra-functional floor plans that will attract folks. One fun fact that I always share for folks, of all of our market activity, market homes that were just listed on the general market in Middletown in the last 2 years, 95% of them were purchased by people out of the city who came to Middletown to live here because they chased the home and then they realized this is a wonderful community to be in. And speaking of a wonderful community to be in, the last thing that we want to do is honor legacy. I think growing up in Middletown, probably the coolest part about our community or the richest asset that we have is our people. And so honoring legacy and using this as an opportunity to do so, it's a historic site already, but being able to honor and layer on a legacy piece. And so you'll notice that on the proposed street, on all of the drawings, it just says proposed street. That is because we will have a community dedication effort in figuring out who we want to name the street after, an influential local leader to name the street after. And then also, this community, even though it's a smaller community, is rich in amenities and has a walking path that connects to Sunset that will be lined with trees. And that will have monument markers that we'll also be able to dedicate to local heroes as well. And so as we were designing this is really what we were thinking of. Next slide, please. And so kind of getting into the build for the future piece. Brandon Homes conducts surveys all the time. Thousands of inputs come in. This is from our most recent survey that we've done. And this was a panel of folks that were put together to understand what are the housing needs and what are the housing desires. And we're using this really as a rubric for every floor plan that we earmarked for this community to make sure that we actually are building for the future based on the needs of what people are saying they want now. Familial housing, that's not surprising, 3 to 4 bedrooms. Multi-generational housing, I can live in a house when I'm 30 or when I'm 70. Handicap accessibility, housing that meets every ability profile. And then energy efficiency, homes that are easy on the grid and also easy on our wallets. Those are what people are saying, these are our needs. And you'll see as I go through some of the plans in the following slides, we're measuring our plans against what people are saying they want in their home. At the bottom here are some desires. None of these should really come as a shocker, just so we're all reading the slide the same. The circle around the primary circle is the amount of applicants or people surveyed that actually express this desire in their survey result. The first is open concept. That's been a thing since the early 2000s. No surprise there. Pantry, modern convenience. Custom finishes is something that has rose in ranks over the last decade, which is interesting. And what is that telling us? It's telling us that people are not wanting cookie cutter. People are wanting something more custom. People are wanting something that more expresses their design and style pattern. Home office, no surprise of the events from the last 4 years at home office, the way that we work has changed. And I think this positions Middletown in a really strategic way to capture tax dollars in a way of where people can work remotely and still call Middletown home. And so that was something that was really important to us as we design home and housing for the future. Laundry rooms, modern convenience, not a surprise there. And outdoor living, that's another COVID thing that has increased. People are really desiring the ability to be outside. Next slide, please. So here we're kind of getting into some of the homes. Mr. Metz kind of walked us through some of these floor plans. I'll walk very briefly through them. Really just to give you the overtone of the styles and how we selected these with the intention of meeting some of those three primary design styles that were present in our from our research and insight panel results. So the Bristol, this is a plan that was actually designed specifically for the Middletown market as a part of this particular effort. This is what we call our traditional farmhouse. So again, that traditional element that is present in the community today, tying that in a more modern, more edgy and fun and attractive way. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, 2,500 square feet, 2-story build. You're seeing that it's checking all of our boxes that we're measuring against people's expectations. This particular plan will be available on the exterior. Again, hitting that multi-generational piece, because this does have not only a first floor master, but it actually has a first floor secondary suite. This particular home, and we'll hit this on one of the last slides, is actually being built in Middletown right now. And that was, again, partly strategic so people could really be able to get an idea of what these homes would look like. We will be doing an open house. I will share more details about that towards the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. The Briarwood, again, taking a modern take on an old concept. So this is our take on the modern Cape Cod. It's 3 to 4 bedroom ranch, 1,650 square feet, 2 bathrooms. Again, checking all our boxes, and of course, since it's a first floor master, or since it's a ranch, there'll be a first floor master, and it checks the box on our multi-generational housing piece. Next slide, please. Our Ashford model, this is a traditional 2-story home, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, again, boasting that first floor master, 2,260 square feet, checking all our boxes, available on both exterior and interior lots. This is the Ivy. Again, this is a Craftsman Tudor. So there are several Tudor homes, and we were wanting to figure out how do we bring this into this community, because a lot of the Tudor-like homes in the community stand out, and a lot of people are attracted to that style. And so this is a modern take on that. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, 2,100 square feet, nearly 2,200 square feet. And again, this one is also boasting a first floor master, available on the exterior and interior lots. Next slide, please. This is a modern Craftsman farmhouse. So again, bringing in that Craftsman flair, and with a newer concept of, it seems to take the market by storm with Chip and Joanna Gaines, this farmhouse flair, weaving that in, 4 to 5 bedrooms. And so this is a plan that's very unique, because it's offering us an ability for familial housing, right? 4 to 5 bedrooms, 2 to 3 bathrooms, 2,100 square feet. And so the price can be contained because of the square feet, but you're still getting a lot of bedrooms in it. Very popular for housing, in which you're seeing a lot of blended home arrangements in the community. This is available in the exterior and interior lots, first floor master. Next slide. Craftsman Cottage, there are a couple cottage homes, and so we wanted to weave in the Craftsman style on that as well. This is a 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2,100 square foot plan, available in the exterior and interior lots. Again, all of these are checking our boxes. First floor master available in this one as well. Next slide, This is a traditional two-story, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2 to 3 bathrooms, 2,100 square feet. This will be available on the exterior lot, checking all of our boxes with that first floor master. Next slide, please. Now we're starting to see plans that are palatable to particular price points. But one of the things that you'll see is we're not sacrificing design for price point. But you are seeing that square footage number drop a bit. So this is 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, 1,735 square feet. It's checking all of our boxes except it does not have that first floor master, so we can't check that multi-generational housing. This is one of those trade-offs that you'll start to see when you get into the smaller plans. You know, a lot of people may not desire a large home, but being able to have a product that meets their needs is important too. So a good variety. So these plans are about 7 or 8 of available plans that we have in this community. One of the things that you'll see employed on every single one of these plans are a mix of beautiful finishing materials, whether it be hardy board and batten, hardy lap siding, stone. You'll start to see some of the ornate trim detail on the exterior that we've kind of moved away from as an industry, unfortunately, like the pediments and the corbels. You'll start to see different color palettes being employed that you typically don't see on homes because of cost and because of a lack of craftsmanship. You'll start to see architectural difference like opposing roof lines, steep roof pitches. Those things are important to drive home style. And those are things that unfortunately in my industry we've moved away from, but to Brandon Homes' benefit, because it's been really the reason that has supercharged our growth as a business. Next slide. So these one of the dates have already passed. This is a slide from the zoning presentation as well for our Carlisle model. However, we do have a Middletown pop-up model that we will be opening up. That should actually be July 14th from 3 to 6 o'clock. And one of the things that I always tell folks is come and see it. Come experience the level of quality. Come experience what these homes are going to be like. The home that is being demoed on that pop-up model is the exact home that will be the model home for this particular community. So you guys will be able to come, be invited in. There'll be light refreshments served, and we welcome the entire community. We hope to see you out there.
Is that July 14th or June 14th?
It's the second Wednesday. This was an update that was sent over, but it wasn't captured. It's the second Wednesday of July.
Okay, just so everyone's on the same page. Thank you.
And we'll post that on social media too, that way, and then send out maybe an updated slide here. Alrighty. Of course, with the permission of council, I'm happy to answer questions. I can be on standby for any community questions that you guys might have.
Great. Well, we'll start with council if you have any questions while we.
I did a question.
Sure.
There we go. Have you encountered any complications with the site, the topography, the steep drop? How do you plan to deal with that?
For sure. And so the development process itself accommodates for that. So we are what we would talk about in the preliminary phase. And so what we have is we've gone from conceptual to preliminary drawing. That preliminary drawing has topography. So the topography has been taken out from the site. We've gone through utility viability, working with the city engineering team. We've gone through a lot of those important steps. The next step would actually be, so to answer your question shortly, yes, we have that's exactly the point that we're at. Once a plan like this is greenlit, what we would move into is more expensive testing. Soil samples of the site, we would move into actual fine topography calibration on all of our plans. And what that's going to allow us to do is set what we call construction drawings, right? It'll have every grain of dirt where it's supposed to be, what the actual schematic of our utility is going to be to serve every single lot. It will get pretty granular pretty quick. But at the point that we're at now, we're at that discovery phase in which we have 90% of the answers, but of course that 10% requires a level of investment that we would have to have approval for.
Can you explain to me, because I'm not a builder, the difference between detention and retention pond, and why I see there's a detention pond that's written in the drawings, and what that's needed for and where the water comes from and goes to and what it might look like or feel like?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and Scott, you'll grade me after this. So basically, there are requirements that basically says, okay, if you're, for how much, there's equations that people, they get paid a lot more than I do, put together. But basically, the gist of it says, it's a calculation of impervious structure and how much rainwater that you're collecting from that impervious structure. And so there are certain allotment ratios that say for every drop of water you collect, we want you to detain that on site and meter it out in a normal fashion into the city system. And so that goes into actual, this is a detention pond because we're detaining the water, or we're sending the water to detention to wick it out into the city's water storm management system. And so the sizing of that, those are conversations that we'll have in that 10% of diligence of, okay, what size do we need to actually be able to detain the amount of water? And they'll calculate how much impervious structure we have, right? Rooftops, roads, sidewalk. Those are things that are really efficient in wicking water and then collecting them into the stormwater system that we'll have. We'll have storm drains, and then detaining that into the detention pond for a specified amount of time for it to move out into the stormwater system for the city. Scott, how did I do?
So from a visual perspective, because obviously it looks like it's a large area.
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of land that's been allocated for that. From a visual perspective, is it grass, like a grass inset, or how is that? Because I know we see retention ponds as well, right? That have fountains and whatnot. I don't think that's what we're talking about here, but I also want to.
No, and so the detention pond, a lot of times you'll see them finished in stone, and so the immediate area around it will be, some vegetative buffer like grass, and then the actual immediate area inside that might be stone, compacted dirt. The design of that really, depends upon the engineer. And so we get construction specs in the field of what's appropriate. City, engineers and leadership has an opportunity to look and review that and respond to it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course. Any other questions?
Okay, so I have
Yeah.
more. I saw that, I think in Mr. Metz's presentation, there was a discussion that the Central Avenue facing lots would have side or rear garages. I think all the home models that you showed all had front-facing garages. Can you just clarify?
That's a great question. So all of our plans, it's a very popular option. So we show them standard is kind of how they're shown there. But all of them have side-facing orientation. So for example, that Bristol model that we'll be demoing, it was shown here as a front entry. It's actually a side entry, the model that you're gonna be demoing. So that model that you'll see will actually be the model that will be built in the community. So it's a slight architectural change. Essentially what you'll see, it will look like a part of the home. And so there'll be windows, and then it'll actually be the side entry overhead door to the right or the left of the house.
Okay.
The owner's preference.
Thank you.
That's a good question, yeah.
And then the pedestrian or bike path out the backside, I know that was something that the council was really interested in. I'm really grateful that made its way in. Is that intended for public use? Is it private, only for the residents? And is it made for bicycles and skateboards? Is the gradation, like, is it going to be really steep, or I know not all of that's figured out, don't get me wrong, but.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that was an element that, of course, city council and city leadership advocated for, and we're really excited to incorporate that, because I do think it brings connectivity into the space. One of the things that we're doing, so it's going to be a 5-foot width, which is a little larger than standard, of course, to allow two-way traffic on that. And to answer your question, it will be actually paved blacktop. So it'll be smooth surface, not a heavy incline and everything, and it will be open to the public.
Great. Yeah, it's a beautiful park back there now. So.
Yeah, especially with all the improvements.
Just to confirm from before, when we went through this last time, there would still be the deed restriction on it for, was it 10 years to be owner occupied? And then would there be a HOA that extend?
Yes,
Okay.
there would be an HOA.
That's who would manage
Yep.
the detention pond and the common areas and so
Absolutely.
on. Okay.
Can you address and we've had a couple comments about the fill dirt on the land. Is that something you're able to address at this time, or, okay?
So that's very much a part of the diligence, that the 10% is, as I call it. So what happens next, actually the very next step after approval, is we'll commission what we call a geotechnical report. That will actually have soil borings at strategic locations that I deem are interesting, or they, from their perspective, as they research the land, as they deem are appropriate. They have access to historical topographical data, so that we can actually see how that land has moved over time, right? And then be able to say, okay, there was a fill event at some point here in this particular area of the site. So we might set a bore. What a bore is, it's gonna go so far down into the ground and core it. And then once we submit that to the lab, it's gonna basically say, hey, this is a composition of the type of soils you have, and this is the compaction that we encountered. To set my footer down, I need 1,500 square, PSF of compaction. I'm going to be able to know at what depth I get that. And so once, as we respond to the data, they'll give recommendations to us. A recommendation might say, hey, we encountered good, solid, virgin soil. Most of these homes will have basements on them. So we'll be significantly under the ground. They might say, hey, we encountered, the best case, we encountered good virgin soil at planned bottom of foundation. A likely case, and which is very common in communities, they might say, we've encountered fill dirt. And so as a response to that, there's many engineering solutions. Tracking a pad, an engineered pad of compaction, is very common. And so that would be, removing the fill, replacing it in an engineered controlled way, a larger footer basis. There's tons of engineering solutions that would be appropriate in that particular case. But that's the next level of diligence. And a lot of the diligence process for development requires that. So that will be next.
Thank you. And the order of how this whole development will play out, I believe you're planning to put a model home on Central and sell the lots, and the purchasers then choose the model home to be built. Is that the?
Correct. So we'll have a demo home. We call it, just a place to inspire thought, right? Fill out space, get general sizing. But then we'll have marketing materials, 360s, walkthroughs for all the plans that we will have available in the community. From that point, folks would be able to select whatever lot they want, sign a contract with whatever home they want to put on that lot. Our plan is actually, just for the sake of progress, actually to phase this out in a way to where, since the lots 1 through 4 are conforming to current zone, being able to develop those immediately. Nothing stops that from happening, even in this calendar year. And then be able to do that while we're putting in the road and some of the infrastructure that takes, frankly, quite a bit of time to do, quite a bit of time and resourcing. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from council? Will we have Mr. Brandon up? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we will then go ahead and open our public hearing. We'd be happy to hear from the public if you're for or against the planned development. So we'll start by opening up with anyone for the development if you're in support of it. If you want to come up to the dais, state your name and address for the record, and we would love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Mike Modaffrey. I live at 21 Forest Glen Drive in Middletown, not far from the potential development, and been here 18 years, and my wife and I walk past that. We go to Sunset Park a lot, bring our dogs over there, and I remember when they tore down the school, both of us have said what really looked nice there are some homes that would fit into the neighborhood, and pretty excited to hear what I've heard. And I like the fact that it's a local builder that is looking to do this. So I'm in support of it big time, especially after what I've heard. That's why I came here. I wanted to listen to what everybody had to say about the development. So that's pretty much all I got.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
If anyone else wants to speak in favor of the, oh, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Keith Alexander, not a local resident, but a large investor. Been investing in Middletown for the past couple of years, and I'm very encouraged by what the proposal presented. As an investor, both residential and commercial properties, I see it as a benefit to draw to Middletown quality, affordable, and a detailed house, something that would be a privilege to not only own, but to live in. I credit Brandon Holmes because I am acquainted with Philip and the integrity. That's what I'd like to comment on. I see him as very promising as a builder, someone whose reputation complements the services that he provides. So I own quite a few commercial businesses and still investing in Middletown. So I'm encouraged by what I see proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're grateful for your most recent investments in our city. We look forward to working with you. We have anyone else who'd like to come up and speak in favor?
Andy Brickler, 301 The Alameda. It's interesting, I look at this, my second time seeing this presentation. Every time I hear him talk, I just get more excited about this project. Being the president of the Highland Historic District, we got a lot of comments about this, understanding it, right? Brandon offered to do an outreach, right? It's different, right? He's trying to reach out to the community, get input, quality. That just blows my mind. He didn't talk about it this time, but had it in my notes from the Planning Commission meeting, 2x6 walls versus 2x4. Stuff like that is quality. It's made to last. And then lastly, the research. Did research in the neighborhood, really looked to see how it impacted the neighborhood. Planning Commission answered everybody's questions, for or against it. He answered questions. Big difference than I've seen in the past. So I'm definitely for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Logan Yerger. I'm currently closing on a house on Highland Street, 1917 Highland. I was born and raised in Middletown, moved to Cincinnati, and it's always been a special place for me. I want to come back. I'm buying a house and planning to do some renovations in it and come back to the community, and it's nice to see beautiful homes going in down the road. I think it'll bring a breath of fresh air to the town and attract, some buyers that could help breathe life back into the city. I know we've been trying to get Central Avenue going for a while, and I know the businesses down there would love, some extra people looking to spend some money. So I think it's a great opportunity for Middletown. It looks like Philip has put a lot of thought and time and effort into the houses that he wants to build. And I think it would be a great project. I would look forward to really see those houses pop up on Central Ave and say, wow, look how beautiful this is. And it would be encouraging to know that other families can come back or start as well. So definitely for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to those projects you got coming with that new house, I'm sure. Any other comments in favor? Okay, seeing no movement, then we'll open the public forum for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. You can come on up to the dais and state your name and address for the record.
Change my glasses. My name is David Brown, and I live on Kenwood Drive. And I'm not opposed to this at all. I'm actually for it. I came to the Planning Commission meeting on May the 10th and presented the fact that we watched them haul a large amount of dirt from Sunset Park to the depression where the old schoolyard and track was. Then I came back to the meeting, council meeting, May the 15th, and made a nice report that all the neighbors watched them haul all this dirt into this project. Well, I gave each of you a little plot plan, and about 45%, which somewhere around 18,000 cubic yards of dirt, was hauled from one place into another place. Everything that I found out is you can't build on fill dirt. 6 feet of it by 130 yards one way and 100 yards another way. I spoke to the man that hauled the dirt in, and he said, hey, it needs to be hauled out and dirt put back in, and it needs to be compacted, and there's some science to compaction. They lifted it in 6 to 8 inch levels and move it up and move it up. My big concern is that I don't look out there one morning and see them building houses on land that is not suitable for homes. Land that's suitable for homes is virgin ground or ground that's been compacted properly. I'm all for the houses. I think it'll help Middletown 100%. My backyard backs up to it. There's some things I don't like that I'm going to probably have to give up, but I can deal with that. But I can't deal with building on land that's not compacted. I made a bunch of phone calls over the past week or so, and I thought these guys were crazy. Take all that dirt out, put that dirt back in, and compact it properly. There's a large amount of money for hauling dirt, but to do it, I'm getting numbers of $200,000 to $300,000, and maybe more. And I didn't come here to scare anybody. I mean, if I could snap my finger and make all of it go away, then I could go home and I wouldn't have to worry about this or even think about it. My feeling is that the point of my report was that the fill dirt doesn't compact itself, and the excavator who hauled it in agreed with what I said. I came here tonight asking the city council to acknowledge the fact there is a problem concerning the fill dirt. The right thing to do is not to wait for Mr. Brandon to find the problem with the soil, but to address it now. It's a problem. It's a big problem. The only way of knowing the magnitude of the problem is for the council to get involved in it and maybe get a couple estimates to see what this problem really involves. I realize all the costs are the responsibility of the builder when it comes to everything on the project, but both the city council and the builder should come to some kind of agreement concerning this issue before they vote to give the land to the builder. So it's fair to Mr. Brandon, it's fair to us, the citizen, and it's fair to you, the council, that everybody knows the score going in. That's all I'm asking for. I 20 homes, I don't know. When it's all said and done, it's going to look nice. I'd like to keep my path walking down through there, but I'll live without that path. But the fact that the dirt is not suitable, you have a building, you have people in your building department that can answer that question, and everyone I've asked, you can't build on fill dirt 2 to 3 years old, doesn't compact itself. I wish this man all the success in the world. He builds lots of houses. But I made my point. I brought my letters. I brought my studies. Something needs to be done about that. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. I know we did address that, Mr. Brennan. If you have anything else you wanted to add, you're welcome to come on up and address that if you'd like.
So certainly the gentleman is correct. You cannot build on fill material, and neither do we intend on doing that. Sorry, sir. You're certainly correct. You cannot build on fill material. No one is advocating for building on fill material. As you can see, I got a long career ahead of me. It won't last long if I build on fill material. The process involves, there are actual soil scientists that are involved in this process. We can't put the cart before the horse, and I'm sure that the city doesn't want to bear the responsibility of my $70,000 test. And I, of course, as a developer, can't bear that until I get an approval on the project. This is commonplace. We have a significant amount of money, and your estimations of six-figure fill placement costs is not far off. That's all in our project numbers, and that's projects like this require a significant amount of resources to bring to life. Resources that we have documented, and resources that we have earmarked exactly for that. And so that's kind of what I had mentioned earlier, both at the zoning meeting and at this meeting. There are many different solutions for that fill dirt. One of them you mentioned, and that's the compaction, and that's the common sense way to approach it. That's how many people approach it, doing a controlled fill. That process is engaged on, I would say, a majority, maybe 50% of communities that are developed, because it's very rare, unless you're buying a cornfield, that you have topography that lends, to not having to do that. And so 100% hear your concern. 100% can assure you once again that by no means will we be placing homes on fill material. Our intentions is to rely on the engineers and the professionals who we will enlist to do this work, and follow the facts, follow the data, and then come up with a construction solution that is appropriate. That is what we have done on previous projects. It's what we'll do on this project, and it's a part of our diligence process. And I might remind you that the process requires it. So even if you didn't have faith in me, we can have faith in the construction processes and oversight, both here at the municipality and at the county. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Never that. Understood. Yeah. Certainly, and it's not magic, it's construction. And so, what will be. Absolutely. And the good news of that is we'll have that, because that's a part of the process. It's required. And so we'll actually have the soil results. We'll have the engineer's perspective on the site and how we're going to address it. And then we'll have a cut fill plan that's submitted as a part of our construction drawings that goes over all of this. You know what I mean? My thing is I I appreciate your comments because it comes from a true place of concern. And we always say at Brandon Homes, it's the grandma test, right? If my grandmother couldn't stay in the place, I wouldn't have anybody else's. And so you can rest assured that not only will the process protect the consumer, that I'm going to protect the consumer. And so there's a process to development, and that's how we prevent these things from happening. And if we follow the process, which we will, we don't have an option to, but we want to, it's going to iron itself out. I can assure you that.
If you have a lot more to say, I would just ask you come up to the dais because no one's going to be able to hear you later. And I don't want to. The summary of what you said before was you're asking about the process. I'm not saying it's a public hearing. You're allowed to speak all you want. I just want to make sure people can hear you. So if you want to, I would ask that you come up to the dais just so it can be on the microphone so people can hear. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. I know because it's being recorded and later people just can't hear if you're on the microphone.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. What I don't understand is, when we saw all this dirt hole in there,
Yes, sir.
you can test it all you want. I know 6 feet down, as tall as I am, is not stable.
Yeah.
Now, when you have an area, let's just say the size of this right here,
Yes.
that's all filled like a big bowl, how you gonna make it go away?
So a test is not going to fix a problem. It's going to alert us to a problem. And it's not a problem. This is something that it's very, very common to encounter on these kinds of projects where you're moving mass amounts of earth to try to get to an eventual end. How we're going to come about that, I'll leave to the engineer, but I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to tell me to remove that and then to place it back in a controlled fashion. That's my guess. But again, you never know. We might dig down and the test might tell us that we're on virgin soil. And we'll have the test to actually show that, to show the compaction, to show the soil compositions. And so you're absolutely right, sir. The test is not going to solve anything. It's going to tell us as professionals how we solve it. And then those findings get translated into construction drawings, and then those construction drawings get handed over to the team in the field, and the team in the field then executes it. But when you're doing controlled fill, it's not a trust exercise. It's not like, okay, this is what the plan said, is this what was done? There are actual engineers that come out every 6, 8, 9 inches.
Well, they're called lifts.
And they'll actually come out and check to say, okay, this hits compaction, and you build it up. It's a tedious, and it's an expensive process. You got that right. And that's something that we've earmarked for this particular project. Development is not an inexpensive exercise, neither is home building. But we have the resources and the expertise to do it. And I would just remind the community that this is not anything that's different from many other sites. I have in contemplation several projects of this size and scope. 3 of them, or 2 of them, I know I will encounter this, and the third is a cornfield, so it's flat. And so there are things in this process that if you follow the process will iron themselves out. We can have confidence in that.
But back to what I said, when then go back to the first part, we, the neighbors, watched them haul that in 6 feet deep.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's virgin soil down 6 feet deep. But when you're building 10 homes in that confined area, it's kind of hard to pick and choose what I'll compact and what I won't compact, because everything else around that will end up still being loose, which doesn't do a whole lot for foundations and porches and patios and things like that.
All of our foundations are on stem walls, even our porches and our patios. So it's a part of the structure. It's all engineered. So that's what I'm saying. There are, and we don't just go and pick and choose where we, compact. Scientists tell us where we go and compact, and so we'll actually set bores in areas.
You'll set what?
bores. There's a boring rig that comes out with a large hammer that takes a core out, and it goes very deep into the ground, 16 so feet, give or take. And then that core is pulled up, and we analyze that core as it's pulled up. And so that's what we'll do. And we won't just choose one site. Those bores, as we disperse them around, they'll actually
So
be
your
able to tell
company
a
does it
story.
itself?
No, our company doesn't do it.
You hire
We
somebody to
pay
do it?
people to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of that information will be made readily available to the team to our counterparts on the city side, on the county side, that will review the construction drawings and have a level of comfort. And so, and we don't just do one or two sites. We look at the bores. We understand where is the affected area with the fill, and then we compact those particular areas. And we do it all at once. We don't do it home by home. We do it all at once. And so when that neighborhood is turned over to me, and it's developed, and the utilities are placed, and the street is placed down, and the dirt is compacted to an appropriate level, I'm ready to come and put a home on it.
So what you're telling me is if this area is all all fill dirt, the chances of it's all gonna be compacted.
Correct.
That's
If it requires that.
All I want to do is look out my window and see that this ground is done properly, and then everybody's happy.
There we go. There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Are there any other questions from the public before I have a seat? Thank you.
Diplomacy at its best. Do we have anyone else who would like to come up to the dais and speak in opposition? Okay, seeing no movement, we will close the public hearing. The way that this proceeds, we have a first reading for the change to plan development this evening, and then the second reading will be at our next meeting where we take a vote. And I don't believe it's being proposed as emergency, so then it will have 30 days to enactment after that. So of course, if you're a citizen and you still have more comments, you're welcome to email City Council. We won't be voting until the first meeting in July, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for all your time. And if anyone's here just for the public hearing, you're welcome to leave, or you can listen to everything else we have going on in Middletown, which is amazing. That brings us to our citizen comments. As I said before, if you had filled out a card and you intended to speak at the public hearing, you just don't have to come up, and we'll pass by you. I think we have 9 citizen comments this evening, and we have 4 minutes allocated for each individual. So when you come on up to the dais, just state your name and address for the record. First, we have Candace Keller, followed by Jessica Pressler.
Candace Keller, 3430 Central Avenue, Middletown. I'm here to address the council on the need to continue the moratorium that prohibits the cultivation, processing, and retail dispensing of medical marijuana within the city limits. Ohio legalized medical marijuana 60 days prior to my taking office in the Ohio House, and I served on the Health Committee during my entire tenure and heard a number of hours of testimony on bills regarding issues of marijuana use. The prevailing problems with medical marijuana have not changed. Foremost, there remains insufficient evidence to support marijuana as an effective pain-relieving agent. As such, it is state law, but now we must decide what we want for Middletown. The city will now take the lead in this matter. I will focus on one prevailing concern alone today, the effect on teens who may intercept legalized marijuana in Middletown. Marijuana has a particularly insidious effect on the brains of teenagers. In states where medical marijuana is legal, the number of teens visiting emergency rooms with cannabis in their systems rose significantly, costing those communities financially in a number of ways. In Colorado, the number of teens quadrupled in emergency rooms following marijuana legalization, mostly for mental health issues. More than 50% of those hospital visits were made by people with no health insurance. Those believing marijuana to always be safe must know that it is frequently not. Regulation of the purity of the product is still in play. More than half of hospital marijuana-related visits showed that teenagers have other drugs in their systems as well, including alcohol, amphetamines, and cocaine, proving that marijuana is both a gateway drug and an added detriment to clarity. Other long-term risks associated with teenagers are respiratory issues, increased risk of cancer and heart attack, childhood development during and after pregnancy, increased nausea, vomiting, and dehydration. Middletown City Schools do not need one more thing to contend with following the interruption of COVID in the last few years. In states where medical marijuana has been legalized, high school test scores have dropped dramatically. Lethargy among students increases and unemployment rates rise. This is not what we want for Middletown. How would this affect our police department and our emergency responders? Law enforcement would see more impaired drivers, and the monitoring of those underage users would add additional burden to our already stretched police department. To those who believe that this would increase our tax revenue, while millions could be added, money would have to be expended in other ways: law enforcement, labor shortages, more dangerous travel risks, school monitoring, an increase in the abuse and addiction and neglect of children, and increasing public funding for poverty and welfare programs. The black marketing of the drug would fall into a new category of monitoring those who fail to pay taxes on their purchases here and cross state lines to get it, breaking the law in their own states. Promoting pot in Middletown sends a mixed message. We say we want to see the end to drug trafficking in Middletown, but now we're welcoming another mind-numbing substance to medicate and depress our citizens. This is about the same thing it is always about: making money and getting high. We are not stupid. And so I stand here in opposition to the continued onslaught of an industry that cashes in on taxpayers who will have to fund the law-breaking, abuse, the neglect of children, careless operating of machinery in our companies and plants, and add an expense to families and a new burden placed on our law enforcement. I do not support the lifting of the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jessica Pressler. No, Jessica? Okay, we will move on. Mike Madafory?
I think that was Mike Madoffery. He already
Madafory. Thank you, and he already spoke.
And he left,
Yes, he
yes.
did. Okay. I'm unable to read the name. The residence address is 1900 Minnesota Street. Okay. Thank you. Oh,
Native American crest that goes back more than 2,000 years. I have a Christian crest that goes back to the 1600s. My father's father's father was a soldier and a cop in the Civil War. His father or his son, my great-grandfather, then my grandfather all served World War I, World War II. I served under law enforcement.
can you state your name and address for the record? Just
Frederick John Gaylor, Jr.
And
All
your-
right, April 14th of 2022 in Trenton, Ohio, I was beaten by police officers on film. I pursued justice, accountability, and law and order. July 15th, I wanted to carry signs, went to the mayor and protest the two cops that beat me in front of my grandchildren on film. I got threatened. 5 officers came out, said I had a problem. One of them wanted to said, watch out for the bullet come on the back, while I got a hooker sticked on me on film. I got this on film. That's a box of evidence against the corruption. October, you guys wrote me a ticket, came on my property, threatened my dog. My dog was walking, had to jump on him, disrespected me. I have pictures of 3 cars within a block from me on the property, more than 4 months, showing bullying, singling out, as well as provocation. On November, I came to the council meeting. Again in February, I was promised a meeting by the mayor herself. In April, I was attacked on film and audio, my own, at a rallies. And what had happened was, whatever happened, I wanted to write a pro se motion with an intent to sue, as well as a legal letter. I was denied on May 8th, in front of, on film, Mary L. Swain herself and whatever gentleman and the corruption there is no right to deny my federal constitutional rights to put pro se motions in on intent to sue, or a clerk of the court being told by anybody. That's where the corruption is. That's why I want the meeting, present the evidence, and I have the evidence, okay? But that's Mary L. Swain. All you citizens, that's your, supposedly, to be on my side. She did that right here in this courtroom on film and audio. All I was trying to do, my landlord was called because I called so many times to get an audio from 911 after the attack at rallies. I was told in a 3.5-minute recorded device, I have that I should go back in and get the $6. I said, ma'am, he just threatened me. It didn't matter, the police came. His call came in 1.5 minutes after my 911 call, tit for tat, the cops knows, and they deploralized me on the thing. Mary L. Swain did a favor right here in this courtroom in the corruption, all right? So on 8th, I wasn't allowed to file, but June 14th, right here, I was allowed to file. I'm telling you, I got video evidence against corruption in here. And the council promised me a meeting in February, but they also sat there to provoke, to entice, and to hinder my accountability, justice, and law and order, and deny my federal rights, my Ohio constitutional rights, to put in pro se motion or a letter to a judge. And my only thing by the Constitution is to give it to the clerk of the court. But citizens, I have my birth certificate, my law degrees, all my degrees right here. I want to leave a number. And if any citizen or the council wants to give me the meeting that they promised me on my audios that I can produce to the citizens, so I can present the evidence and we can get to the bottom who told them in this building on May 8th not to take my motions to provoke, entice, or further bully. On the 16th in Minnesota, there's a sign. I have video evidence. You cannot see the sign coming up to it. 2 blocks from Douglas Park where children walk back and forth.
Sir, that's the 4-minute time limit. I hate to cut you off, but that's...
All right, let me leave my number
Council.
with the mayor. She's got it. Anybody wants, you can get it from them. I give you permission, since we're all concerned about civil rights. I have evidence, a box of it. It'll take your lawyers more than a week. Thank you for your concern. I expect a call, even telling me you can't see a meeting with me to get the evidence against the corruption.
For the record, I will share his phone number. He requested it. It's on the form. His number is 513-384-2118, if anyone would like to be in touch with him. Next, we have Sharon Flegel-Burke. You want to take a pause before you start, you're welcome to.
My name is Sharon Flegel-Burke. I live at 5010 Oakview Drive, Middletown. I'm here today to discuss the future of the holiday hoopla. I'll start the comments and Evan will be continuing them. 2 years ago, 3 citizens with the support of city administration and several council members at that time started the Middletown Holiday Hoopla, a nonprofit event. The mission was simple: to create through a public ice rink and light display a regional attraction to capitalize on the 100,000 guests who visit Light Up Middletown and the more than 100,000 additional guests who attend the Lebanon Horse Parade, Hamilton Pyramid Hill Light Display, Spooky Nook Tournament, and Oxford hockey events. The desired outcomes were to increase revenue for downtown businesses, attract potential businesses to the area, create an environment of excitement for residential recruitment, and build an amenity for the citizens to enjoy for years to come. For the past 2 years, local foundations, businesses, hospitals, and individual citizens rallied together, raising the funds to make the project a reality. As a nonprofit organization, Holiday Hoopla continually looks for ways to improve operational efficiency and increase financial viability. To increase the project's long-term sustainability, the Hoopla team studies various options and determined it would make more sense to own the ice rink equipment rather than rent it annually. This would reduce the fundraising need from close to $500,000 to a little over $260,000 a year in the first years, with their number going down each year as the project and its annual revenues grow. For more than a year now, the Holiday Hoopla team, including its vendor, have been in discussions with the current city administration and council members concerning options to acquire the ice rink equipment, which, with the city's support, would enable our nonprofit to focus its efforts on raising funds and operating the rink annually. In this way, we can all continue to bring the economic revitalization project to downtown Middletown, and the public-private partnership would provide an easy win by driving guests and businesses to downtown, promoting revitalization, and foster civic pride for the greater Middletown community as a whole. And Avon will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Avon Kaiser.
Since I started this, I've had to get glasses, so this is where we're at. Avon Kaiser, 7280 Oak Trail Lane. As you are aware, during the last several months, at least 3 separate council sessions, 4 of you voiced approval to move forward with the rink acquisition. However, at the administrative level, our vision and your vision for the project's possibilities have been met with, in our view, delays, misconceptions, and indecision. Meanwhile, the over 6 month postponement of the legislation has stymied Hoopla's efforts to put the organization in an impossible position. Relying exclusively on grants and private donations, fundraising alone for this project takes a year's worth of planning and execution for the upcoming season. Ideally, with early commitment from the city, Holiday Hoopla would have been in the position to actively promote the project and begin the intense efforts to raise the needed funds by now. Unfortunately, as of today, we've been unable to secure that commitment, essentially the same commitment that was requested at the council meeting in January. And therefore, with regret and disappointment, the Holiday Hoopla Board does not see a viable pathway to raise the funds needed in time to facilitate the ice rink, interactive light displays, or weekend festivals for the upcoming 23-24 holiday season. At this point, we believe we have explored and discussed the available options and don't want to be in a position where the vision is entirely at risk. Holiday Hoopla believes in this vision and is willing to continue the conversations and offer its full support for the 2024-25 season if the city is prepared to commit to the equipment purchase by the beginning of July, while the pricing option is still available and advantageous, as the ice rink company have made it clear that the options will not be available indefinitely. Lastly, I would like to clear up some misconceptions that may be at the root of what's held up this partnership. Misconception 1, can the ice rink be converted into a roller rink? Yes, this is something very doable once the city gives us a permanent location, but not until we have a concrete pad on a permanent location. Misconception 2, was there an ask for an additional $115,000 for a chiller unit? No. When the ice rink was leased, the $115,000 chiller was provided in that agreement. Purchasing a $115,000 chiller for a quarter year without a permanent rink location is a bad idea. The Hoopla would have never endorsed. Even the vendor doesn't recommend it. The plan all along was to rent the chiller and fundraise to cover the rental cost year over year. Misconception 3, why is the initial funding request changed? It has not. To be clear, we We have always said that $246,000 is what is needed to acquire the ice rink and lighting package, and will go on record today to confirm that that is the number we're requesting. Misconception 4, is the city buying Hoopla's debt? The current agreements resemble a rent-to-own agreement. In making the payments, the city would be getting Hoopla's equity interest to date. In fact, the vendor is willing to give a Zamboni machine at no cost for an additional value. In the simplest terms, the city would be acquiring equipment with a projected value of over $350,000 for only $246,000. Rather than leasing, the city would own the equipment, but would be protected through a buyback program offered by the vendor. As you all know, Holiday Hoopla is comprised of entirely a volunteer team of citizens who are committed to Middletown, its revitalization, and its growth. Our board is fully committed to this project, but the timeline for the decision is coming to an end. While the Hoopla will miss the 23-24 season, the city can secure the Hoopla for the 24-25 season with legislative action by the beginning of July.
I have to.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying things as well. Next up, we have David Brown, but I do believe he has left, so I'm going to move on from David. Steve Lewis. Followed by Zach Starry, I believe, is the last one.
Good evening, Council.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
Steve Lewis, 4614 Wicklow Drive. I guess there was a couple items I had, and one that came up, I saw the agenda, was in regards to the cigarettes. All I would ask is that we follow the laws that are already available to us and that have already been passed, and that they're utilized. If there's a problem and that's happening and we can't get to these other issues, then come along with it. But we already have these laws, and this has been very aggravating. I sat in with a health board of health meeting, same thing in regards to feral cats. We have these laws out there, legislation, but we just don't seem to want to follow them, or we find ways to go around them and make up new rules that I really scratch my head. If we can't enforce the ones we already have, why are we making new ones up? With the last meeting, I would encourage, and maybe this has changed, I've heard some conversation, I would encourage the medicinal dispensaries for marijuana. I, for one, am very fortunate to have my medical card. I have about, I don't know, last count, about 38 lacerations, permanent nerve damage in an arm and a leg, radiation from cancer. Go down a list of things. One of the things especially is Advil. I can no longer obviously take that, stroke out. So it has been a real plus. I also want to comment that the dispensaries I go to are beyond professional, beyond guarded. The people that I deal with are actually very helpful when I'm trying to figure out what will work best for my ailments. Are they physicians? No. But working along with my family physician, we get it figured out. Then lastly, I don't want to pound on this because after hearing the last two speakers in regards to Holiday Hoopla, how I understood this, and maybe I'm confused, but at the last meeting, there was a figure thrown up that about $175,000 was additionally needed. Now hearing what I've heard now with the $246,000, I don't know where this all really stands. But I do want to make a comment. It kind of goes along with the swimming pools and recreational as a whole. When we had our daughters, we took on the commitment as parents that we would entertain and take care of our kids ourselves. I'm not saying that the city shouldn't have some activities and do some things in order to have people come to town, spend money. I get that. But after hearing and seeing what's been going on with this, I just really scratch my head. Where is this money going? Police, fire, and infrastructure is what I'm expecting from my local government. That's what I look to. As far as grassroots, I get that. I've been a part of it for 25, 30 years, been doing it for a long time. But I'm not looking for people to entertain my kids. My wife and I worked harder, we put a pool in. My wife and I worked harder, we went on vacation. My wife and I worked harder, and we sent them to private school. We did it ourselves. I don't look for city entities or government entities to do that for me. So I would really think hard about where you're going with this money. We do have 28 to 30 parks that need to be addressed. And that's entertainment full-time all year long. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Zach Starry. I hope I said that right. You're going to have to correct me. Stacy. Oh, okay.
Zach Stacy, 640 Hamilton Lebanon Road. I live in Monroe. I'm here tonight out of concern for some comments I've seen regarding medicinal marijuana in Middletown. As you know, Monroe has got several dispensaries in Monroe. I can tell you Monroe is no haven of crime. It's a pretty quiet town, small town, and we have seen no negative impact from the dispensaries we have in town. The only negative impact I could think of is the traffic in the parking lot from all the people out of town coming to spend their money in Monroe, which only benefits my city. I was born and raised in Middletown, grew up on Texas Avenue, Maple Park. Some words I've seen thrown around are illicit drugs. Let me tell you about illicit drugs. My mother suffered from mental illness her entire life. She's a sick lady. We had a hard life because of it. Doctors at the time prescribed medicine during the opioid crisis to combat her mental illness, only to get her addicted to opioids and then cut her off. In 2011, she lost her battle to addiction and died in her house on Texas Avenue. I made it out of that. My life has gotten much better. I'm fortunate because my kids don't know that kind of life. My sister was not so lucky. She fell victim to the same lifestyle, and it was a struggle. I thought I was going to lose her too. I'm proud to say she's 2 years sober now with a college degree in psychology. And that is in large part, and believe me, I had my preconceived notions about marijuana. My mother was a drug addict, so I was against cigarettes, beer, what have you. I hated it all. A jaded notion now, I see. But my sister owes her sobriety in large part to medicinal marijuana. Because after finding the right treatment centers, getting her medical card, she wasn't lined up on a sidewalk outside of a Suboxone clinic with other addicts like zombies. She was able to get healthy, get clean, because of medicinal marijuana. It is a short-sighted view to continue the war on marijuana as if it's a Schedule I drug. It's a short-sighted view to threaten members of this council at the next election and potentially rob this city of some of the strongest leadership I've seen in my lifetime. And I mean that. You guys are doing a good job. To potentially remove you guys from your seat on such a outdated view, I think is a dangerous notion. I think it's time to let this city move forward. I think it's time to do the right thing, and we should all support you as you try to do so. The war on marijuana only distracts from the war on the real drug crisis. The money we could get from the potential revenue from these dispensaries and operations could pour into our local services for police and fire to actually combat the real problem. Marijuana is not the problem. I support you all 100%. I think you're going to do the right thing, and I appreciate your time this evening. It's good seeing you guys.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for the loss of your mother.
That's okay.
Thank you for sharing your story. That's the end of our citizen comments this evening. That brings us to council comments. We'll start with Mr. Farrell.
Well, where to start after all this? First of all, thanks Board of Health for anybody that's still here. I don't think they are, but thanks for the meeting at 4:30. Thanks for all the citizen comments. Thanks to Brandon Holmes. I thought it was pretty exciting that one of the things he said was he's a business and he wants to be here in Middletown. And I haven't really heard that too often. So it's exciting to see people from Middletown staying in Middletown, investing in Middletown. As far as holiday hoopla, it's just unfortunate where it's at. I guess that's really the only words I have to say. I don't know what else to say besides that. That's all I really have. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Nenny.
Thank you. I would like to extend my apologies for my late arrival today. I do look forward to reviewing the YouTube footage of the joint meeting with the Board of Health, and thank you to Jackie and the members of the board for their time and dedication in improving the health and wellness of our citizens. I also want to thank Nancy Nix, our Butler County Treasurer, for her invitation to council to represent the City of Middletown and Columbus today in support of Ohio House Bill 187, which is being co-sponsored by State Rep Thomas Hall, who represents Middletown in the 46th District. 187 aims to modify the procedures used by the tax commissioner to conduct property tax sales assessment ratio studies, requiring a 3-year look back instead of the current adjustment, which is based solely on the previous year's assessments. Specifically, this could mean a potential 42% increase in valuations for our citizens versus a more reasonable 25%, something that is creating a lot of fear and worry in Middletown's local economy and the further implications that it may have for those on fixed incomes or those who live paycheck to paycheck. Rising construction costs, demands for housing stock, and then subsequent lack of housing stock, and the lingering economic impacts of the global pandemic are all factors that are specifically contributing to the inflation of property values, which have disproportionately positioned Middletown for such a large percentage increase as opposed to many of our neighbors across the state. We're an older industrial community, which, as we discussed tonight with regards to new housing developments, leaves us with very little developable land and more costly challenges to the progress that we seek. That being said, I was honored to speak alongside fellow Butler County leaders to the Ohio House Ways and Means Committee about the challenges of our community and what we face if we see a 42% increase in property valuations. So I wish Representative Hall success in his passage of House Bill 187, and that is all I have for this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Moon.
Yes. 2 items. Let me start with hoopla. I'm just incredibly frustrated that we're at this point. We have angry and frustrated volunteers that have donated time and money to this cause. We've had multiple public discussions at public forums. Council decided how much money we were willing to spend and even out of which accounts we would spend those funds. We had a consensus on this topic. I really don't understand how our direction and follow-ups led to this point. I have a lot of questions for staff, and we'll get there. But again, just very disappointed where we're at. Secondly, wanted to thank Monica for driving up to Columbus and testifying today. That's certainly just a huge issue, and if our citizens see 40+% average increases in their property taxes and home values, we're going to have some evictions and foreclosures on a scale that we don't want to see. So thank you for making time to do that, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Muterspaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Just thank you to Steve, Candace, Zach, Sharon, Evan for coming out and speaking tonight, because it's hard to do that. Speak what you believe sometimes and to get your point across. So thank you so much. That's all I have.
I want to also repeat thank you, Ms. Nenny, for going up to Columbus today. That was really important. I also wrote a letter of support. I hope that was also included, and I think we're fairly united on the support to House Bill 187, and hopefully we will see something there that will at least suppress the spike, the potential spike in property valuation. So more to see on that one, but thank you so much for taking your time. We appreciate it very much. Okay, next that brings us to city manager reports.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Condrey. The only thing I have on here is to remind the citizens and everybody that the aggregation public hearings will be tomorrow here in these chambers.
The electric hearing and public comments will be in questions you can ask. The aggregate company will be at noon and 5:30 for electric, and gas will be at 12:30 and 6. So gas and electric, noon and 12:30, gas and electric again at 5:30 and 6 p.m. And that's all I have.
Thank you. That brings us to consent agenda. Ms. Fink, will you please present that for us?
Sure. For your consideration this evening, we have the approval of the City Council minutes from April 18th, 2023. To receive and file the following Board and Commission minutes: the Library Board of January the 18th, 2023, the Board of Health minutes for May the 9th, 2023, and the Civil Service Commission minutes for May the 18th, 2023. To confirm the personnel appointments of Kaylee Moreland, Jacob Compton to the position of Corrections Officer, and Conant Smith, Landry Floor, and Anthony Scott to the position of Patrol Officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police. To receive and file an oath of office for Fisher Langdon, and to confirm the resignation of Jeremy Lukinas from the Architectural Review Board, Historic Commission, and the Planning Commission.
I would like to move that the matters listed under the consent agenda be considered routine and enacted by one motion and one vote of consent.
Second?
Ms. Fink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
On the motion agenda, we have to authorize the Middletown Division of Police to donate a 1992 International Armored Truck to the Voluntary Firefighters Corps and Rescuers of Cabo San Lucas.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions on this? Okay. Ms. Fink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
To authorize the city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Bayer Becker in an amount not to exceed $500,000 for civil engineering design services related to the planned development at State Route 122 and Union Road upon the receipt of bond anticipation note proceeds as authorized and appropriated by ordinance number O/2023-35.
So moved for adoption.
Second?
Any comments or questions?
No further comment.
Ms. Fink, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
And finally, to authorize the city manager to execute a revised pre-development agreement with Wayland Ventures LLC related to the redevelopment of certain properties owned by the city in the downtown district up to $30,000.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Fink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to legislation this evening.
Great, thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we get started, I do want to note that we do have 4 emergency items going into action tonight, or for your consideration. So I would request a waiver of the charter provisions related to those 2, 2 being a first reading emergency and 2 being a second reading emergency. But to waive the charter requirements requiring 30 days to enactment and the second reading provision for the ones that are necessary.
I would move that resolution number R 2023-18 and resolution number R 2023-19 be considered an emergency for second reading adoption, and that resolution number R 2023-20 and resolution number R 2023-21 be declared an emergency, read one time only, and to waive the 30 days to enactment.
Second?
Ms. Fink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Great, our first item this evening is resolution number R 2023-18, and resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation from the general fund for the closing on the acquisition of certain real property consisting of approximately 29.56 acres located at the southeast corner of Union Road and State Route 122, authorizing an agreement with Grand Communities LLC in connection therewith and declaring an emergency. And this is a second reading.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Nothing further to add.
Any comments or questions on this one? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw? Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes. Item 2 this evening is resolution number R 2023-19, a resolution consenting to an enterprise zone real property tax exemption pursuant to Ohio Revised Code section 5709.911B, authorizing the delivery of such consent to the Department of Taxation Equalization and the Butler County Auditor, and declaring an emergency. This is also a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any further comments?
Nothing further to add.
Council? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Item 3 is ordinance number O 2023-45, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a 3-year contract with Crown Castle to provide backup internet circuit. This is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Nothing further to add.
Any comments or questions from council? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Item number 4 is ordinance number O 2023-46, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to grant an easement to the Board of Park Commissioners of Metro Parks of Butler County, Ohio, for construction and maintenance of a section of the Great Miami River Trail across the city-owned parcel at 300 Oxford State Road. This is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Nothing further to add.
Council, any further comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Item 5 is ordinance number O 2023-47, an ordinance authorizing the amendment of a contract with Cartograph Systems LLC for the purchase of asset management software. This is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Nothing further to add.
Any further comments or questions from council? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Next is resolution number R 2023-20, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio, for the period ending December 31, 2023, and declaring an emergency. This is the airport fund and the general fund.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Council, these next 2 items deal with a personnel action and a litigation, and I am going to invite Zach Barnhart up, our staff attorney, to explain the agreement and then the cost.
Good afternoon, Council. This is, again, going back to a discussion we had a couple weeks ago, and I apologize, Mayor, if you want to go ahead and make your remarks before I kind of dive into.
Oh, yeah, I abstained from the executive session. I know the individual, there's no real need for me to abstain, but just out of clarity, I just would rather not vote on this one.
Again, Council, this kind of goes back to a matter that's been on pending amongst the city and this individual, former employee, for quite some time. I came involved in it. We were able to finally come to a resolution, and with the council's approval here today, we'll be able to take another step of reducing the amount of civil litigation that we're facing as a city. Any questions or anything? I know I went in more detail a while back. Thank you.
If council has no questions, then we'll go ahead and take a roll.
Right. Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Abstain.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Next up is resolution number R 2023-21, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a settlement agreement with Ashley Schulte and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any further comments or questions from council? I believe this is already explained in the previous discussion. Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Abstain.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Item 8 is resolution number R 2023-22, a resolution declaring the necessity of repairing certain sidewalks and driveway aprons in the city of Middletown, requiring that abutting property owners repair the same and declaring an emergency. There is no action requested until July 5th, 2023.
Mr. Lawley.
Council, this does a few things for Public Works. Council will receive and file the repair specifications for the gutters and drive aprons, and it will also create what is called a resolution of necessity that makes it necessary for designated, identified property owners to repair defective sidewalk issues and aprons. As part of the 2023 Local Street Improvement Program, it requires the work to be done. It requires to perform the work under contract and assess the owners for the concrete repairs. The total cost to be assessed to homeowners totals $306,298, with the average cost being around $1,578 per lot.
Any comments or questions from council at this time? Okay, we're ready for the next one.
Great, thank you. Number 9 tonight is ordinance number O 2023-48, an ordinance changing the zoning classification for one parcel known as 2701 Central Avenue from R3, which is medium density residential district, to PD, Planned Development District, and improving preliminary development plan. This is a first reading.
Mr. Lawley, do you have anything to add?
Yeah,
from
the only
public
thing I
hearing?
had to add is to remind everybody that what this does is this is the public hearing to change this to a planned unit development. The builders and everybody, they still have to do the geotech surveys, the soil surveys, the engineering work. It's not like if this is approved, shovels don't go in the ground the next day. There's still a lot of work that has to be done. It has to go through the architectural board review and things of that nature. So there's still a lot of work to be done for this project. This particular public hearing is to change it to a planned unit development. That's all I have.
I do want to comment that it actually feels good to be working with a partner who I think has the right intentions and has Middletown at the priority, and it's nice. I'm not saying that we don't have other partners like that, but I feel that for sure in this particular developer, and I really like the designs that they've come up with, and I like the plan, and I think it has a lot to offer our communities.
If I could just add one thing along those lines, you know, I've sat in a lot of public hearings over 7.5 years. I don't think I can ever remember so many positive comments coming up at a public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that speaks well of the project.
Well, it was good to see Philip and Mr. Brown trying to work it out.
Yeah.
You know, and he obviously has a ton of knowledge, Mr. Brown does, and concerns are valid, but I think the work Brandon Holmes does will be a very positive thing for the city in that particular development.
Any other comments or questions on this one? Okay, we can.
Next this evening is ordinance number O 2023-49, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with K.E. Rose to retrofit a 2014 Freightliner MT55 with a new power takeoff compressor. This is a first reading.
Mr. Lawley.
The power takeoff compressor that's in the current 2014 Freightliner work truck that performs various technical work is beyond repair, and this allows us to purchase a new one.
Any comments or questions from council?
Final legislative item tonight is ordinance number O 2023-50, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an amendment to a contract with Shook Construction for an early work package in advance of Phase 2 of the Downtown CSO Basin Project. This is a first reading.
Mr. Lawley.
I'm going to invite Nikita down, the Assistant Director of Public Works, and she's going to explain this to you. She can do it a lot better than I can.
She's done well in the past. We look forward to it.
Thank you. You guys are familiar with the Downtown CSO Storage Basin Project. We're doing that as progressive design build. So Phase 2 of the contract will be the guaranteed maximum price for full construction of the project. The contractors requested that we approve an early work package in advance of the GMP amendment for construction so that they can begin some work to help support construction. There's a couple items included in that early work package that are specifically necessary to support development of the GMP, and that's the dewatering and the supportive excavation engineering. And then there's some other items in there for site demo and site prep work to help them be able to hit the ground running once they have the GMP amendment authorized. Total amount of that is $1,067,863. Any questions?
What happens if we say no?
So there are options. I mean, we don't have to approve that. We can wait till we get the GMP amendment. So that would just delay some elements of construction. I think that that would put us behind schedule for construction. I don't like that we're in the position that an early work package is necessary to meet our construction timelines. I think that we do have some bargaining power with Ohio EPA on the consent decree deadlines. So I think as long as we're making earnest effort and meeting those deadlines, they're usually pretty flexible if we were a couple months late on the consent decree deadline. So I don't think it's a deal breaker. And then I think, you know, another option, I didn't really think through it when I prepared the staff report, is approving some of the early work package and not all of the early work package. So that's an option too.
Yeah, I've read this staff report a couple times, and it's just kind of like, we haven't even really, I mean, we've started it, but we haven't, it seems weird to already have the request at this point, and so that's kind of why I'm scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah, and I do think it's because we lost some time on the design. I think our original schedule looked at us being able to start construction like full on in like this time frame. So we took a little bit more time on design. I think that was time well spent. You know, there were some things that came up that I think it made sense to make sure we got right before we moved all the way through. Yeah, I agree. I also would like to just approve the GMP, but I think in the interest of keeping the schedule moving, it's a reasonable request.
Is another benefit in keeping the schedule moving cost? Are we looking at potential increase in cost if we were to wait, or is it locked in?
Well, the cost won't be locked in until we get the GMP amendment for it. The couple items on here that I think were important for preparing the GMP amendment, which was the dewatering and the supportive excavation. If we don't do that work in advance of the GMP amendment, I think the contractors that bid on those work packages will probably be conservative in their estimates on that because they don't have sort of the details to support what that cost would be. So I think that it's good to get that work done up front. I think that we'll get more competitive costs on the GMP as a result.
That being said, is there a reason why this is being proposed as a regular 2 reading with no emergency if there is some expediency that we're asking for in getting the work done?
Yeah, to have it my way, I would have probably requested this as a second reading emergency to be able to move it forward quicker. Just out of respect, I know council doesn't like to approve things by emergency, so I did put it as one.
But we are allowed to ask for it. Just something for the rest of council to consider as a second reading emergency. If there is this expediency, and if it is going to help us with pricing, and if it is going to, you know, allow us to get a better pricing model from our, you know, from our bids, I just want to throw
And
that out there.
I've done a lot here in the last several weeks to encourage staff to look at all of that, especially the cost end of it. And if we're not affected in any way, we need to stay away from emergencies.
We do appreciate that.
Any other questions for me? Okay, thank you.
I want to publicly thank you for the last time you came up to talk about the storage basin and also the water towers. I was able to take the YouTube video link and send it to a lot of citizens, and it answered all of their questions. So thank you for being thorough in your presentation. It was very helpful to us to help answer questions to citizens. So appreciate it. So to Ms. Nenny's point, is there an interest from council in considering a second reading emergency for this ordinance? We may as well just discuss it now. I mean, we could bring it up at the next meeting if everybody would like to just take some time and think about it as well. Okay, well, how about at the next meeting, if someone wants to make a motion to make it a second reading emergency, we can do so. Gives people a little bit of time to think about it. And then,
I certainly would like to give people a chance to think
Yeah.
about that, because I know this is different than what was originally proposed to begin with, so, but just to throw that out there.
sounds good. Sounds like a plan to me. Okay, that is the end of our legislation this evening. Do we have any new business items that anyone would like to bring?
It's not really new business, and this might be a question for Scott, but I had another phone call today about water meters and people getting back bills because of the estimations were wrong, and this is happening to a lot of citizens I know. I know we talked that people have been calling and complaining, and this guy, does this sound unfamiliar?
I didn't know there were going to be back bills. I thought it was estimated and there's no
I don't know.
back billing.
Yeah, I think
Can
it's
we
the
give an
Sam
I think people are
question,
confused
Scott.
by it.
Can you guys answer that, or do you want me to have Sam? Okay.
Well, if we can give an explanation, because to be quite honest, I'm confused because I've heard like 3 different people give me 3 different answers on, or explanations.
Well,
of what's
that's their
happening today.
perception.
Right. Well, to the mayor's point, if we say it right now, I can copy and paste and send it out.
Yeah, I'll do my best. There might be some additional details that water billing could provide that I can't. We did get behind on replacing the automated meter reading equipment, which transmits the meter reading data to our billing system, so we're able to accurately bill people for water consumption. So we had some MTUs that had completely failed in the system. And when that happens, we're not getting accurate water meter readings from them, so they go on estimated billing. Water billing looks at their water consumption history and sort of like picks a point and makes that. We do put that on the consumer's bill. I understand that not everybody looks at their bill if they're doing electronic payments or auto pay or something like that. I'm guilty of that myself. So we have talked with water billing that maybe communicating it when people are on estimated billing a little bit more proactively, such as mailing out letters, something that's more, makes a better effort to get their attention with that is a worthwhile effort. So I think water billing is working on starting to mail out letters for that. So when they do replace the MTU, then we get an accurate meter reading. So if that turns out that the estimated consumption month over month was low, and now they've accumulated kind of a higher balance on water consumption than the water that they've paid for, they do get retroactively charged for the water that was used. Water billing does offer payment plans as long as people aren't, several months delinquent or something like that, to help people with that. That's not my decision on the, charging people retroactively for used water, but it is based on an accurate meter reading. It is based on accurate water consumption, so that's kind of their position on that, but it's not a Public Works and Utilities decision, so. But we are aggressively working towards getting the MTUs replaced. I mean, I think you guys recall we've purchased something like 14,000 MTUs. So we have all those here. It took a little while to get those shipped with a lot of the supply chain issues. So we have them. We have a contractor in place now that's helping us so that we can try to get caught up and get ahead of it now. But that's still kind of working its way through the system. So right now because we are replacing so many MTUs, I think we're seeing a lot of this sort of all at once. So.
I also had a citizen reach out to me and ask if they had theirs replaced a couple of years ago, are they supposed to get it replaced again? And got a response from staff that no, that's not the case. That, if they have had their water meter replaced recently, this is not another new water meter. So I think there's a little bit of confusion there too, of people who don't even know if they have the new meter or they have the old meter or if they need to get it replaced. So
yeah, and you're actually helping with another point is I think there's also confusion on whether it's the meter being replaced or the MTU, and they're different.
Okay.
So like there's some people that had thought that they were getting a meter replacement, not an MTU replacement, and then when they got the estimated billing and they thought that their meter had been replaced, not the MTU, they were like, well, if my meter wasn't working, why are you charging me for water? So I agree. We've been working with Troy Anderton on doing a little bit more with the public outreach of that. This feedback always helps so that we can try to get the messaging dialed in a little bit better too on what you guys are hearing. you know, we take the feedback that we get and try to, you know, figure out how we can communicate better on this, so.
And if they're not sure if they need a new meter or a new MTU or what their situation is, they can call and give their address and get a more accurate answer of exactly what they need to do at their own property.
Sure, yeah, the water billing department would be able to look up when their MTU was last replaced, so.
And if it needs to be.
Correct, yep. Yep, all right.
Thank you. Any other new business items? Okay, that concludes our meeting. Can we confirm when the next meeting is? Because I realized it was the 4th, it's on the 5th. Okay, so note to everyone, right, our normally scheduled meeting would be on July 4th. We've moved it to July 5th, Wednesday, July 5th, here in council chambers at 5:30 p.m. So happy Independence Day to everyone. Before that, hopefully everyone will come out to fireworks on the 3rd and the parade as well. And we will see you after the 4th of July. Until then, blue skies over Middletown.